Alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we have with us a well-known historian and author, Janab Syed Ubaidur Rahman Sahab. So without further ado, can you please tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your educational journey?
Thank you. This is a very old thing. I mean, upbringing and growing up. Mine was a little tough because I lost my father very early in my childhood. So, and then it was a normal upbringing. And the good thing about me since my childhood was the fact that I started loving books at very early age. So I should tell you a fable. When I was a kid of say 9 or 10 years, as my father was not nowhere, my father had died when I was a kid. So my mother, when she went to sleep, she asked me to, Ubaid, can you keep awake for a while? So what I did, I used to read throughout the night. So this is the thing that I got from my childhood, and this has stuck with me since then. I mean, I read a lot since the very beginning. Since when I was 12 or 13 years, I had sort of read a whole lot of literature, not just Islamic literature, but also other books also. And then I developed sort of a thirst for reading serious stuff. Then history came naturally, and then sort of it has stuck with me since then. So reading from the very beginning of my childhood is something that sort of inspired me to do as good or as sort of well as I could do. And history was a natural thing because I loved stories since very beginning, since my childhood. I had sort of developed a taste for stories. So when I started reading history, I mean, I loved it. I loved the narration. I loved the style of how the historians sort of wrote. So and then I started writing myself. My first story got published in Urdu magazine when I was all of 12 or 13 years. It was in Noor magazine in Urdu. And as far as my education is concerned, I did my MA in post-graduation in journalism and mass communication, and then did my MA in history. That's
So, having had a successful career as a journalist for various national and international news portals, as well as having your own news website, what motivated you to shift your focus and dedicate all your time and passion towards researching and writing about Indian history and Muslim history in particular?
If you are a student of history, or if you have read history in detail, there are several aspects that sort of disappoint you when you read Indian history. The first and very important aspect is the fact that when we talk about medieval history, what strikes us is that Muslim history in the Indian subcontinent has been constituted as a history of conquest. So when people think about Muslim arrival in India, they think that hordes of Muslim armies, they arrived from north. And then they invaded Indian territories, sword in arm, riding on their powerful horses, and that in this aggressive manner, it has been made out to that Muslims came this way across India. And this is something that is completely different. Over the years, in the course of my research, and particularly my research for my latest book, Peaceful Expansion of Islam in India, I realized that the picture is completely different. Muslims did not start coming from north as has been sort of made out to be. On the contrary, almost 400 years before the arrival of Muslims in Delhi, there was a large number of Muslim populations living across western ports and eastern ports. So, from if you talk about say Bengal, Muslims were there in 8th century. If you talk about Gujarat, Muslims were there in 7th century. If you talk about Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu or Coromandel, Muslims were there in large number in almost all the major ports. So another important thing is that when we sort of dig a bit deeper, that this was very natural. Arrival of Muslims was not very unusual, because different communities, including say Christians and Jews, they had been frequenting Indian seaports for a long time. They were there in sort of Malabar in large numbers in say 3rd or 4th centuries. So Arabs, they had been coming to Indian Indian ports for their business purposes much before the arrival of Islam. So there was nothing unusual in that. It was natural process. And the question that you asked and I sort of avoided is that why I sort of got interested in history is because it was because of the fact that these things need to be sort of written, these things need to be talked about. And I had done my task as a journalist. I mean, there's not much in the changing political circumstance in the country. We don't have much to sort of do as journalists. So it was around 7-8 years ago when I published my first book on history. It was Muslim freedom fighters in India. Something that, like, it was a small booklet of around 230 pages. So that was the first book, and then from that next book was Ulema's Role in India's Freedom Movement. Then Biographical Encyclopaedia of Indian Muslim freedom fighters happened. Then came the next book, Forgotten Muslim Empires of South India, and then this latest book. Yeah.
So you mentioned South Indian Muslims and their presence. So how do you address the challenges of historical bias and the marginalization of South Indian Muslim history in mainstream Indian historiography?
This is actually a very important question, and I have confronted this question time and again. In the course of an interview or say a book launch program in Hyderabad last year, Times of India, a senior Times of India journalist who actually sort of edited their international affairs page, he was very annoyed. He said that North Indian historians, they haven't sort of written much on South Indian history. So I said, what has stopped South Indian historians from writing on South Indian history itself? So it actually sort of quieted him, but the important thing is that this is a issue that has confronted the community. So when we talk about history actually, or say Muslim history in the country, so the major focus of historians has been on Mughals. Mughals have got almost the entire limelight that should have gone to say Khiljis, to Tughlaqs, to Ilyas Shahi dynasty of Gujarat, Bengal, to Muzaffar Shahi dynasty of Gujarat, to Khiljis of Malwa, to Bahmanis of Deccan, of the Bahmani Empire of Bidar and Gulbarga. So our historians' major focus was it was attracted by Mughals due to numerous reasons. They were recent, they were powerful, they had great court, they had great culture, they contributed immensely to India's sort of development as a center of civilization. They built huge buildings including Taj Mahal and Red Fort and Jama Masjid and innumerable other magnificent this historical edifices that have survived thus far. So while the kings of the Gujarat dynasty, they were very powerful. They from say 1400 to 1585, or at least till 1500 to 1400 to 1526, they were very powerful, and they were much more powerful than the Lodhis and sort of Sayyids of Delhi Sultanate. But they did not get that sort of importance because of the fact that Mughals were recent, and those say they belong to 700 centuries ago or 500 centuries ago. So they were actually they are very relevant to our period also, because we talk about Mughal king Bahadur Shah Zafar as a freedom fighter. We don't have similar instances of other Muslim emperors and kings in the same frame. So they were recent, and because of their achievements in different periods, we actually sort of got stuck with them. And another important thing is that it's not true that historians in South India, they have not written on it. A number of historians have written, like Humayun Khan Shirwani. He was one of the top historians of, say, 20th century, and he wrote on Bahmani's history. He wrote on Qutub Shahi's history of Golconda. But what has been the sort of sad part of it is that those books have gone out of print because of the lack of demand for those books. We don't read serious books, so the serious books that come out, and the people who sort of spend years and years or decades in researching for those books, there is no readership for those books. So this is a disappointing thing. Another important thing is that if we talk about, say, Bahmanis, because of the lack of interest of Muslims, they have been relegated to, say, footnotes of history. When you read a book on medieval history, and there are innumerable books on South Indian history, what you will find that the Bahmanis, who actually controlled much of South India from, say, 1347 to 1500, and their subsequent sultanates, Deccani sultanates like Bijapur, Golconda and Ahmednagar, they survived for another say 180 years, 86 years, yeah, to be precise. So they don't get that sort of attention from historians due to obvious bias against them. So while we have, when you read a book on history, you will find that a chapter or two chapters are actually devoted to Vijayanagar kingdom, and you will find this only a page or 2 pages or a footnote or two paragraphs as far as Bahmanis are concerned. So this is what troubles me a lot, because when from say 1347, when Bahmani Sultanate was founded, till 1500, when Bahmani Sultanate was divided into different parts, till that time Vijayanagar actually remained subservient to the Bahmanis. They paid annual tribute to Bahmanis, but you wouldn't read that. And eventually, when in 1500, say 56 around, or 65, I'm forgetting, when Battle of Talikota was fought between the Deccani Sultanate and the Vijayanagar empire was completely demolished. But these things, these histories, these stories are sort of very rarely mentioned or very rarely talked about. So this is an important thing, and this was something that had actually propelled me to investigate, to read, to research, and then write a book on the history of Deccan. My book, The Forgotten Muslim Empires of South India, is actually around 700-page book that focuses on the Bahmani Empire and the subsequent 5 Deccani Sultanates, including Ahmednagar's Nizam Shahi, Bijapur's Adil Shahi Sultanate, and Golconda's Qutub Shahi Sultanate.
Right. You mentioned also about the expansion of Islam in India and how Islam came to be in India. So can you tell us a little bit about what you think the role of Islam in India was, or what is your opinion about the propagation of Islam, the spread of Islam in India?
So the view that most of the people, including Muslims, they hold is that Muslims came and conquered and subjugated the local population. That resulted in the eventual acceptance of Islam by local population. This is something that is completely different from what was reality. The first and foremost was the Muslims who came here, be it say Mahmud of Ghazni or Muhammad of Ghor. They were conquerors, and they were least bothered about the conversion of the local population to Islam. They wanted to sort of Mahmud of Ghazni, he was interested only in sort of conquest and taking as much booty as he could. So he went all the way from he invaded a number of sort of local kingdoms across North India. The same was true about Muhammad of Ghor, Muhammad Ghori. So, but the difference between that was when they started coming to India from the very early age. So when Mahmud Ghazni came, we hear that the very famous and renowned Sufi of Bahraich, Salar Masood Ghazi, he came. So the conversion that took place was actually because of the Sufis who came, or because of the fact that Muslims started interacting with local population. In Kerala, we find that the local Zamorin, the king, he actually asked local fishing communities to convert at least one or two members of their families to Islam. This, you wouldn't read about it in many books, but if you dig deep, it has been sort of documented. So this in Tuhfat al-Mujahideen, it's a book written basically in Arabic and written in 16th century by Malayali writer. It's a very famous book, and it has been translated in different languages, including English also. So he says that it was that the conversion actually took place because of this reason, that the Zamorins, the local kings, they were very close to Muslim traders, and Muslim traders, they had huge influence, and also because of the fact that there was caste differences that did not allow upper caste people to sort of interact with lower caste people. Lower caste people who actually worked in sort of in fields and fishings, they were not allowed to come close to upper caste people. So when the Arab merchants started coming to India after conversion, the local Rajas, they were in dilemma because there were nobody to sort of take those cargoes from those ships to markets. So and Arabs, because they were naturally sort of convinced about the need of conversion and expansion of Islam, so they went to the king, and also it is written by some people. Barbosa has written that they sort of bribed the king and his sort of nobility to allow low caste people to convert. The low caste people, and it has been documented, it's written everywhere. That the low caste people, they had no right, and they couldn't sort of come to the habitation of upper caste people. They were not allowed to sort of build good houses. They were not allowed to wear decent clothes. So when they converted, Arab gave them the sort of clothes they wore. They gave them the sort of houses they sort of lived in. So their entire personality, their entire living style changed. The same happened in other parts of the country. When we talk about the arrival or expansion of Islam, we see that we begin from Delhi Sultanate. That started actually in 13th century, early 13th century. But we have instances that there were, Muslim governors in Goa in 10th centuries. 11th century, Pandyan kings of Tamil Nadu, they had Muslim prime ministers, and Muslim traders in those parts were very renowned and very famous. And then also, because the Muslim Sufis, they by 9th and 10th century, they have moved all the way, not just to Bahrain, but all the way to South India. So they also had a huge impact, and they continue to influence the local populace in different part of the country.
Right. You mentioned the role of Sufis in the conversion of Muslims. So, is there any particular story that fascinated you about the role of Sufis and merchants, as you have mentioned in your latest book, Peaceful Expansion of Islam in India?
There are a whole lot of stories. I mean, one story of Sufi that I would like to sort of share with you is that of Shah Sharfuddin. Shah Sharfuddin can be credited with the converting a king who ruled actually Kashmir. So in around 1330s or early 40s, Syed Sharfuddin, he had gone to Srinagar, and the king, he was a Buddhist king who had taken control of Kashmir kingdom at the time. It was his, I'm just missing his name. So what happened? The king was not sort of very convinced about how the religion, the Hinduism was sort of practiced at the time, and how Buddhism was being practiced at the time. So what he did, he said that he held sort of long dialogues with the Hindu scholars and Buddhist scholars, and he was utterly disappointed by what they said about their religion. So he said that whoever he sees tomorrow morning, he'll convert to his religion. So when he woke up early morning in 1335 or 36, around the same, so he went to his window and saw a Muslim Sufi sort of praying for his tahajjud just outside his palace. So it is not to say that Muslims are not there. There were some Muslims, because Muslim traders, they had been coming to different parts of India for a long time, including Kashmir. So he was sort of, this view sort of fascinated him. He asked him to come, and they had long conversations with on different aspects of Islam. He knew Islam, and there were some Muslim nobles in his also court. So he converted to Islam. He was the first king of Kashmir who converted. And let me tell you, this Muslim army, it is not true that Muslims did not make any effort to conquer Kashmir. Mahmud of Ghazni, he tried on 2 occasions, but because of Vedas and because of the resistance of the garrisons in Kashmir, he was sort of forced to go back. He was not defeated. So, and then the kings of Delhi Sultans, they also tried their best to sort of conquer Kashmir, but they failed. But this Sufi, Sharfuddin, he succeeded in convincing and converting a king. But let me tell you another thing, that the conversion of the king actually did not change anything on the ground. The king actually built a sort of khanqa for the Sufi, a small mosque for the local Muslim population to convert, but that was all. Some of his nobles converted, but the conversion that took place in Kashmir took centuries. And then we see that a large number of other Sufis, they came, and then conversion took place.
Mhm. So, what role do you think that in today's scenario, especially, what role do you think historical narratives play in contemporary communal harmony and understanding in India?
Look, communal harmony has been an integral part of medieval ages. This communal discord was actually developed thanks to their devious plans of British rules. You see, when we talk about say 1857, we see that Ghazis in Delhi, they were fighting alongside the Rajput, and Rajputs were fighting not for the resurrection or the sort of development or launching a Rajput empire. They wanted to sort of resurrect the dying Mughal dynasty in Delhi. Then we see that Muslims and Hindus in almost all parts of the country, especially in North India, they came together, they fought together. There was nothing like communal sort of division as far as medieval period is concerned. When actually this Mughal king, Emperor Aurangzeb, he has been made as a sort of communal bigot. But had it been true, you wouldn't find that Raja Jai Singh fighting on behalf of him as leader of Mughal forces against Shivaji. So the general who were leading the Mughal forces against Shivaji and others, including the Rajputs and others, they were Hindu chieftains. They were Hindu sort of generals. And let me tell you another thing, that Marathas actually made around 30% of the nobility in Mughal court during the lifetime of Aurangzeb. It was the highest during, if you compare to any other, say, Mughal king or Mughal monarch. And the strength of Mughals in the country was established because of the fact that they developed a system of governance where Hindus and Muslims, they acted in unison, they worked together. This Rajputs and Brahmins and Jains, they were integral part of the Mughal nobility. And for 300 years, from say since the rule of Akbar started till the dismantling of the Mughal Sultanate in 1857, they remained sort of together. And when we see that Shivaji, actually Shivaji's father was a noble, was a sort of general of Adil Shahi emperors of Bijapur. And then first he was part of the Ahmednagar Sultanate, then he went to Shahji. I am talking about Shivaji's father. So Shivaji's father was actually a noble of a Muslim empire, and he also, Shivaji actually supported this Bijapur Sultanate against Mughals. And then again, he again favored at times, he also favored Mughals against Bijapur. So it was not, it was actually a political struggle that was happening during 18th century that has been constituted or sort of developed by the English historians as Hindu or Muslims. When Muslims came, actually nobody saw them as anything different, because merely some time ago, Hindu rulers, they were ruling in say Kabul. So when the rulers when Babur from this Kabul, he came as the king of Kabul because he had been driven out from his Uzbek sort of fief, and he was ruling over Kabul. When he came to India, Rajputs were sort of trying to support them, the Afghans, the ruling Afghan dynasty in India at the time, their sort of generals, they were also supporting him. So it was not that when Muslims came, they were looked upon as anything different. They were looked upon as a new rulers. Just it was that. No communal differences. And also because of the fact that another important thing that should be talked about is it was a melting pot of sorts when Islam started arriving. There was Buddhism that was a majority religion in different parts of the country, and then they were being defeated and sidelined by Hindu kings and Hindu kingdoms. And when Islam came, the local population, as it is said, and I have mentioned it in my book in detail, that a large number of Buddhists, they actually favored Muslims. It has been written by almost everybody.
How do you perceive the importance of preserving the local history and history of local communities?
At a time when your regional histories are being sort of being written off, and sort of an effort is being made to sort of dilute their importance, it is very hard to sort of preserve local communities history. But in fact, it's very important, and every section of the population, every region should make conscious efforts to preserve their own history. They should tell their history. They should sort of try to sort of project their heroes as national heroes or regional heroes or local heroes. But we have not been able to do that. We should do it more vigorously than ever before.
Right. So, speaking of preserving history, as we know that in today's world, there are constant efforts being made to distort history. So, what can we do? What can be done on our part to make sure that history remains intact?
I am sorely disappointed by how the community has uh, taken the important subject like history so lightly. There hasn't been any conscious effort on the part of, say, Muslim organizations, Muslim historians to write. And when we talk about, say, some important Muslim names, some people say that actually they were communist, the important historians. But actually they did a commendable job by preserving some sort of history. And we should commend the medieval historians who wrote in Persian, in Arabic, and try to preserve the folklore, the local stories, the local histories of the regions. Like if we talk about, say, Farishta, Muhammad Qasim Farishta, his book, if Farishta was not there, we might have not been able to sort of know in detail about who were the Bahmanis who ruled from, say, from 14th to 16th century in Deccan. So Qasim Farishta, who himself was a court employee of this Adil Shahi emperors of Bijapur, he did a commendable job. Then another important thing that we should keep in mind is that Muslim historians, Muslim rulers from the very beginning, when they came, they sort of made it a point to have their own court historians. So their court historians have written about those kings, about those works, about their work, about the development that took place, about the architecture that were developed, the buildings that they sort of erected. But again, because they were court historians, there were exaggerations. Like Qasim Farishta too, actually, if you read his accounts, there are at a number of places when you sort of talk about the wars that took place, and that took place regularly between Vijayanagar and sort of Bahmanis. So he says that in every war, sort of hundreds of thousands of Hindus were killed. This is exaggeration. And we should actually be sort of realistic in realizing that local population at the time in those far off places was not very strong. I mean, cities, they had a population of, say, 50,000 and 60,000, and at no point of time an entire sort of city was destroyed or this entire population was killed. And when we talk about, say, the armies of medieval period, so while talking about, say, the Battle of Talikota that sort of was fought in 1565, in Battle of Talikota is actually a very important war. It is very important battle. We talk about, say, Battle of Panipat, first Battle of Panipat, but that was not as important as the Battle of Talikota. But not many of us actually even have heard about it. So he says, Qasim Farishta says that the Vijayanagar king, he came with a force of an army of around 200,000 soldiers. I mean, this is something unimaginable. It couldn't have been that big. And say the Muslim sultans of the Deccan, Bijapur, the alliance that confronted him, they had around 100,000 people, sort of, so that could not be possible. Their sort of forces were much smaller. But and also another thing, that though the wars that were fought during medieval period, including the war that was fought between Ibrahim Lodi and Babur during the first Battle of Panipat, or between the allies in Battle of Talikota against Vijayanagar, the battles were fought for merely 2 or 3 hours, not for the entire day. So the Battle of Talikota was lost as soon as the king was killed. And the same happened in Battle of Panipat, that when Ibrahim Lodi was sort of killed, the battle was lost. Their entire army sort of disappeared. They fled. So the loss of lives, the brutality that has been depicted in different sort of books, and many of those has been sort of copied from the likes of Qasim and others historic accounts. So we should keep in mind about other aspects and sort of should correlate those with the facts on the ground as well. So if we read the history, medieval history, we should sort of try to sort of actually contextualize those things with the reality on the ground at the time. It's very important.
Right. Like, so you, the way you spoke about certain approaches, so beyond the nationalist, Marxist, and subaltern approaches, what alternative methodologies and frameworks can be employed to study the history of Indian Muslims?
So, I mean, a professional approach should be taken. And as far as Marxists are concerned, we should realize that they are most professional historians. So, if we have to study history in Indian context, I will sort of suggest that we follow them, the Marxists. And if we talk about Marxists, I mean Irfan Habib, his father Habib Sahab, and there's a large number of other historians also of medieval period. We should sort of follow their account, how vigorously they research the historic accounts, how they have developed. And had they not been there, the Marxist historians, we wouldn't have been able to sort of to have those histories or those histories preserved as we have right now. So we should commend Marxist historians for what they have done, and should read them and should emulate them. But when it comes to sort of context, I talk about sort of context. It's very important. We should keep in mind that when they get biased, we should be able to sort of differentiate that. We should realize that this is what they have tried to project, and that is not the right depiction of what was the truth. So let me talk about, say, Aurangzeb again. While we have two personalities, important personalities as far as Mughals are concerned. On one hand, Akbar has been sort of made out to be a bigot. On the other hand, by Islamists. On the other hand, the Aurangzeb has been sort of as a benign, very powerful and good king. So if we talk about Marxists, they have completely different sort of idea about who Akbar was. So we need to keep a balance between those approaches. Neither Aurangzeb was a bigot nor Akbar was bigot. Akbar actually sort of he talked about Sulh Kul, or introduced it not as a religion, but because of the fact that he realized the fact that Muslims cannot survive in the country without actually coming closer and integrating with the local population of the country. So this is important thing. And after Mughals actually sort of weakened after Aurangzeb, because of his sort of unending warfare in South India. First he fought against the Muslim sultanates of South India and destroyed them. Then he fought against the Marathas, and fighting like the present time, it involved a huge amount of money, lots of resources. So whatever was earned from North India was destroyed in South India. So this had an impact on the future of Mughal Sultanate. But to say that Mughals actually destroyed, were sort of completely disappeared as two rulers of the country, is a sort of very myopic idea. After Aurangzeb's son, Shah Alam I, he was as successful as Aurangzeb. But the only shortcoming that we find in him is the fact that he survived only for 5 years and he died naturally. But Shah Alam was as successful as Aurangzeb, and he ruled almost the entire country as much as Aurangzeb had ruled. So we should be able to sort of realize that whatever a historian from a certain angle, right, everything cannot be true, and whatever a historian from that we think is writing from our context can also not be true.
Can you please share some insights about your process of finding the history and finding historical sources, and especially how you uncover and verify these historical sources that have often been overlooked and neglected?
Actually, historic resources that any historian uses are almost the same. We sort of consult archives, we consult libraries, see books, but the only thing is that you need to sort of read a lot and should not get sort of carried away by emotions. So if you are carried away by emotions, it means that you are again biased towards or against somebody. So this approach would be sort of wrong and will lead you to sort of fallacious assumptions. So I'll sort of suggest that anybody who is trying to sort of study, he should consult almost as much literature as is available, and read the original sort of sources, and then sort of reach his own sort of conclusions.
Yeah, so finally, what advice would you give to young researchers and historians who are interested in exploring the underrepresented areas of history, particularly in the context of Indian Muslim history?
There is huge amount of work that needs to be done. Actually, we have focused as far as Muslim history is concerned. As I said earlier, we have focused only on Mughals, and the rest of attention was sort of divided between, say, Delhi Sultanate, sort of, and some other late side like Nizam. So we have left a huge amount of sort of a large area of history sort of untouched as far as history writing is concerned. So, for example, if I'm talking about, say, Rohillas in 17th and 18th century, they were important part of Indian history, and at one point of time they even controlled Delhi. So, but not much has been written on Rohillas. Similar is the fact about, say, Awadh. The same is true about Muzaffar Shahi dynasty of, say, Gujarat, Ilyas Shahi dynasty of this Bengal, Sharqis of Jaunpur. And another important thing is that, and even Shibli also erred on that, Allama Shibli Numani. When we talk about, say, educational development in the country, we actually sort of feel at loss and realize and sort of think that Muslims did not do much as far as education was concerned in medieval period. But this is a fallacious assumption, and this is an area where our young historians can work a lot. And we should also actually focus on those aspects. We can sort of aside, I mean, if you leave aside this Mughals and the Delhi Sultanate, there were Muslim emperors or say empresses in different parts of the country, like this Nargis Banu Begum. She was a Bahmani queen, and she ruled as regent of Bahmani rulers for during the lifetime of two kings. She actually led her forces, went to wars, and sort of held negotiations with different rulers in of the region at the time. Then there is a history of one Bahmani queen actually going to Hajj. She was the sort of mother of second Bahmani king, Ahmad the One, and she went to Hajj around say 1360, and she took around 1,000 nobles of her court, of the Bahmani court, to Mecca. And when she was there, she she married 4,000 Arab brides and grooms, or say 8,000 youth, taking care of all their expenses, including the dowry and also the mahar that the groom pays. So the local the Khalifa or the Caliph was so much impressed by her and her generosity and her philanthropic work, that he asked her to come to Cairo, where the namesake Caliph was based. And she went there, and she was received very generously by the Caliph. These are stories. Actually, we hear about Musa Mansa, the Malian king who went on Hajj journey, but we should write about our own queen going from India all the way to for Hajj, organizing huge marriage ceremonies, taking care of all expenses, going all the way, being approached by the Caliph, being received by Caliph. These are stories that we need to tell. These are actually stories that resonate well with, as far as our youth are concerned, our women are concerned, our girls are concerned. So we should dig deep and sort of write.
Right. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. And I hope that inshallah Muslim youth will start taking history seriously, and they will start working towards it. And I hope that history will be preserved, and we can all work towards the preservation of history, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.